Thank you for joining me for another episode of Get Ready. And very excited about today's show because I'm here with a wonderful friend of mine who met years ago online, and she interviewed me for a program, and then we got to have lunch, which was fantastic. And well, let me give you a little bit of a bio here. So Debra Poneman is an award-winning speaker, best-selling author, sought-after seminar leader, talk show host, and in-demand media guest. Her clients have included corporate executives, popular celebrities, New York Times best-selling authors, and even household names. Her seminar was the launching pad for many now renowned transformational leaders, including Marcy Shimoff, Janet Atwood, Extreme Leadership Steve Farber, and even Deepak Chopra attended several times. So very happy to introduce you to her. Here she is, Debra Poneman.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's just so delicious to just spend time with you. You know, I moved away, so we can't have lunch anymore, but we can meet this way.
Yes, we missed out on our whole wine tour.
Yes, and I never got to go on the wine tour, but look at everybody who's at our little gathering with us.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, it's the things that you've done, the people that you've worked with, and you know, who you learn from, and then the people that you've taught is amazing. So why don't you give a little bit of background on how did you get there? How did you get here?
Well, it's so funny because you said the people I learned from, and most people don't ask me about who I learned from, but I'll tell you a quick story. I became a teacher of transcendental meditation in the 70s, and don't go calculating how old I am. I know how old I am. Anyway, in the 70s, and I was on teacher training with people like the Beach Boys, you know, and I loved teaching meditation. I became an administrator at Maharishi International University, but after a decade working for the nonprofit sector, I realized that woman does not live by mantra alone, and that I needed to make a little money. So I left the meditation community that I was living in, and I moved to Los Angeles because I thought that's where the money was. And those are the days where you didn't think about what your passion was. It was, if you have to make money, just go make money. So I started selling investments, and I was a dismal failure. But you know that expression, we make plans and God laughs?
Yes.
So my plan was to go and make a whole bunch of money and then go back to the meditation community, go back to teaching meditation, which I love to do. But one day when I was selling investments, somebody invited me to the Learning Annex. This was 1980, because somebody was giving a lecture on money. And I thought, great, this is going to help me with selling stocks and bonds or whatever I was selling. Well, I walk in and it's not a bunch of people in suits and ties. It's a bunch of people who would be going to the Learning Annex. I was new to LA. And the guy, this is 1980, he was talking about the law of attraction. And he said that if you want to be wealthy and successful, it's not necessarily about putting together a pristine stock portfolio. If you want to become wealthy and successful, help other people become wealthy and successful. Raise your vibration around money. And he said, we're all like tuning forks, and like attracts like. So if you're always complaining about how poor you are and how awful things are, you vibrate with awful and poor, and you draw that into your life. And no matter what your circumstance is, if you talk about the wealth that is to come and the vision of the future of all of the beautiful cars and homes and whatever, you're going to vibrate with that and draw that. And I was blown away. And I did what any intelligent person would do. I went the next day and quit my job. Now, granted, I hadn't made one sale, but I quit my job. And I immersed myself in the study of the great masters of success and prosperity, Napoleon Hill and Wallace Wattles and Florence Shinn and Emmett Fox. And I put together the seminar called Yes to Success. But I used the principles that I teach others, like all those people that you named who really did implement my principles to create their success. Like, for example, when you have an idea that comes to you, it comes to you because you are the one who's supposed to manifest it. It just doesn't come to you randomly. And that's why we all manifest different things. I'm not getting religious on you here, but I believe that there's an energy in the universe, like the creator whispers in your ear what the creator needs manifest on the earth and picks you as a worthy vehicle. But guess what? If you don't listen to that whisper and get going on that idea, you had first dibs, then the creator is going to give it to somebody else. And and so many people, that was my idea when they see somebody write a book or become wealthy and famous with their idea. Well, you know what? You had first dibs and you didn't do anything about it. And, but I had the idea to put together a seminar to bring that kind of esoteric, energetic, metaphysical, all of those principles of how to create success and wealth and bring into the general public. So number one, I acted on it. I didn't wait until everything was perfectly in place because I was a broke 29-year-old at the time, or 28-year-old at the time. And I drove a beat up Chevy Bel Air that my aunt had left me when she died. And I was going to go teach people how to be wealthy and successful. But one other principle, not only that an idea comes to you because you're supposed to do it, not only that you shouldn't wait until everything is perfectly in place, because there will never be a time when everything will be perfectly in place. I always say to people, take a step from which there's no turning back. And even though I had 1,000,001 excuses about why nobody should listen to me when I teach them how to become successful, I took a step from which there was no turning back, and I rented a room at the Santa Monica Public Library, and I put up posters, because that's what we did at the time. We put posters. Debra Poneman to speak on how to say yes to success. And the one other thing is, when I had my idea, I didn't go around telling everybody what I was going to do, because those great masters taught me that what is sacred should be kept secret. So I didn't tell everybody my idea, because they said if you tell everyone your idea, it's like letting the steam out of the kettle. Every time you tell someone, it's less likely that you're actually going to do it. And you might run up against the discouragement committee, those people who are going to tell you why your idea isn't going to work. So it's crushed when it's a tiny seed before it's even had a chance to grow. So the end of my story is I put up those posters, took that step from which there is no turning back. And I went to the Santa Monica Public Library, and they were standing room only. And within a few short years, my seminars were being taught in 7 countries on 4 continents. And that was decades before the internet made communication instantaneous. That was phones that were connected to the wall, you know, with the curly kind of cord that stretched. You remember them? And we didn't even have fax machines back then. It was snail mail. And I still had my seminar all over the world within a few years.
Amazing. I totally get that. When I wrote my first book, what I called then the joy to success, later changed to the key to success. I was writing it while I was sitting at the desk as a temporary secretary, making $9 an hour. It's like, okay, I'm not there yet, but I know this stuff. I know I have to put this out there. So yeah, you can't wait for it to, it's like, okay, as soon as I have everything perfect, then I'll put it out there. Because yeah, as you said, the universe is not going to wait. It's like,
when it's needed, it's needed. And I'll tell you something, when you said people I learned from, of course, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi was my first teacher when I became a meditation teacher, but also my first secretary made me think of it when you said you were $9 an hour. My first secretary was Marcy Shimoff. You know that? Who went on to become the #1 nonfiction best-selling woman author of all time, selling 16 million chicken soup books. But she was at one of my seminars in the early 80s, and she came up to me, 1981. I want to work for you. I want to work for you. I love what you teach. You know how cute she is. She's just like bouncing up and down. And one of the other principles that I teach in my seminars is that the person in front of you at any given moment is the most important person in the world and deserves to be treated that way. And you give that person your full attention. See, a lot of people, what they do is they look around the room to see if there's somebody more important to talk to. There's a principle in Kabbalah, which is the Jewish mystical text, that when you do God's work on earth, God will do your work. And one of the things that we do doing God's work is treating everybody like a precious child of God. So there's that little Marcy jumping up and down, wanting to work for me. And I didn't think, what can she contribute to me? You know, she's this kid. And but I heard her out, and she was brilliant even back then, and I hired her. She actually dropped out of college to be my personal assistant, and she came up with absolutely brilliant ideas. And her first speaking engagement was when I got sick, and we were going to have to cancel a seminar I was doing in New York. And she said, well, we have to cancel it. I said, no, we don't. She goes, well, who's going to do it? I said, you.
You.
And that was her first speaking engagement. So, and then one other principle of success is that then many, many years later, when she had already written Chicken Soup for the Woman's Soul and the Mother's Soul and all those series, she was offered Chicken Soup for the American Idol Soul. And she couldn't do it because she was under contract for Happy for No Reason. And they said to her, who do you know who's a great writer and knows American Idol backwards and forwards? Well, by that time I had kids, tweens.
Yeah.
So and she said, I have the perfect person. And I was handed a best-selling book to write, the #1 TV series of all times, combined with the #1 book series, nonfiction book series of all times. And I was given that book to write. And again, it's because many years before that, I had treated her as the most important person in the world.
Yeah. And created a lifelong friend.
And created a lifelong friend. And, you know, I love her to pieces. And then years later, also when you know the story, my seminar became so successful and was being taught all over the world. But what I teach people is the only path to true success is following your heart, even if it seems that it's not taking you in the direction of the goals that your mind has set.
Yeah.
And I had all my goals. And when my daughter was born, I took one look at her and I thought, oh, new goal.
Right.
And I left the world of speaking, became a mom at home for 21 years because my son was born 3 years later. But, you know, we were each put on earth for a purpose. And if you take off a couple years to hold AIDS babies in Uganda or work on a presidential campaign or be a mom at home or a year off to be with your mom while she's making her transition, your dharma, what you were put on earth to do, is not going to go away. As a matter of fact, if you follow your heart, it's going to be even stronger. And when I came out on the other end, after I finally left Chuck E. Cheese and I came back to teaching the people who I had helped back 21 years before that were the first ones who said, Janet Atwood got me my first speaking engagement when I came back. And then a few years after that, Marcy said, Deb, I have this great idea. Let's teach this program together. And that's when Your Year of Miracles was born.
Right.
So really, all of these principles really hold true. And I was back speaking on platforms and teaching seminars. No, nothing changed. As a matter of fact, I was even more effective because during those 21 years of being a mom, a full-time mom, I learned so much about how to create true success. And I always say I've had a lot of gurus, but I learned the most from the gurus who call me mom.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And what a great example of when you're operating from that high level and trusting your intuition, and rather than the shoulds, because I imagine there are probably people who said to you, oh no, Debra, you shouldn't give this up. You should stay on this course, and you should, you have this money-making thing here, and forget about what your gut tells you, forget about your intuition, and it's the almighty, this $ goal or whatever.
Right.
And because when you're at that higher, that more true level of what success feels like, it opens you up to opportunities that you would otherwise miss.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is no big aha to anybody listening, but success has nothing to do with how big your house is or how fancy your car is or how flush your bank account is. It has to do with waking up in the morning and loving your life and looking in the mirror and loving yourself. And that's true success. And if I was getting up every morning at 5 o'clock I was about to have my own daytime TV talk show. I left that out. Janet Atwood, who is the founder of the Passion Test, was actually another one of my assistants. And she was there when I was meeting with the producers. She was my scribe. She took notes while I was meeting with the producers. And that was supposed to happen after I had my baby. And when I had my baby, I actually was supposed to do a series of seminars in Southeast Asia, and the promoter, whose name is Chiang, I'll never forget this. He called me and he said, I heard you had the baby. Let's get the seminar set up. And I said, Chiang, you're going to have to call me back in 18 years, which I did. He still reminds me. But you know what? Again, you were putting there, and there are people waiting whose lives are meant to be changed by you. You know, some people say, well, I want to teach success, or I want to teach happiness, but there's so many people teaching those things, or I want to teach tapping. You know, I'm not Brad Yates, or I'm not Margaret Lynch, or I'm not the Ortners. Guess what? There are people who were born with their contract is to learn from you. It's for their lives to be changed by you. There could be 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 people teaching success, but there are people who are supposed to be my students, and there are people who are supposed to be your students.
Yeah, and there's plenty of people. And it was like what you were saying at the beginning about how the universe gives you those ideas of, you know, here's this, and you have to act on it. It's also, the universe is not so cruel, you know, whether you call it God, creator, source, it's not so cruel as to say, here's the mission that you're supposed to have. Oh, but by the way, you'll never be successful at it because I'm not going to give you an audience. You're going to want to be a speaker about success, but no one's going to ever show up at your events because that's just because I have a sick sense of humor.
Right. As I say, the creator's not a trickster.
Yeah.
Right? Wouldn't give you that idea without giving you the ability to fulfill that idea. The only reason you don't fulfill it is you give up too easily. Yeah. You know, hey, life isn't just an upward trajectory. It's upward, plateau, maybe even a little down. But you just got to pick yourself up, and you just got to take it from there. And by the way, you are the first person who I heard of tapping from. When I interviewed you, that was the first time I had ever heard of tapping. And you were so brilliant when I interviewed you. And I thought, oh, and that was when I looked into it because of you.
Well, thank you. It's always fun to hear.
Yeah.
You know, trying to get it out there. Now you've taken me off what my next question was, Debra. Tap, tap.
I did that on purpose.
But yeah, and but I really love that message of, you know, if you have this calling to do something, there's someone out there, and no matter how many of us out there, you know, and I've told plenty of people this about putting, you know, they say, oh, I don't want to make a tapping video. You've already got it. It's like, there are some people who will not hear it from me. There are some people who are not going to like the way that I do it. Right. There are people who don't like the way that I do it, and I'm okay with that mostly.
Okay.
And they are not going to hear it from anyone the way they'll hear it from you. Just as when you were teaching, and some people got it from you, and then some people were waiting for Marcy to get it from you to pass it on because they were going to only hear it from Marcy.
And, you know, that is such an excellent point, because I don't know if I ever told you the story, but one time when my kids were little, and I usually didn't put them in front of the TV, but they were really out of sorts. So it was definitely a TV day. Yeah. And they were like maybe 4 and 2 or 5 and 2. And I put them in front of the TV. Did I ever show this story? They wanted to watch Barney. Okay.
This one. Okay.
So they're like, they're saying, wheels bounty. My daughter had a speech impediment. So she's like, wheels bounty, wheels bounty. She couldn't say her R's. And I go, I'm going to get you, Barney, just like, you know, cool your jets. So I'm doing this channel check looking for Barney. And I see one of my students on the TV showing Oprah, the power of the mind, using a little technique that I had cognized in a meditation and taught at my seminars. And here he was showing it to Oprah, and Oprah is flipping out. Oprah's like, oh my God, that's the most amazing thing in the world. I'm going to show this to my whole staff. And people say to me, were you really mad? And I say, no, because when I left and I knew I was going to take 18 and then 21 years off, I said to my students, public domain, take my stuff, teach it. People need to hear it. And I was telling that story at a seminar decades later, and somebody raised their hand and they had literally tears rolling down their face. And they said, do you know what? I saw that Oprah show and it changed my entire life. Yeah. And that's it. If I had said, they can only hear it from me, you can't teach what I'm teaching, then that person's life, and probably thousands or tens of thousands, because it was Oprah, their lives wouldn't have changed. But so what we need to realize is that there are 7 billion people, or maybe more, and there are plenty of students for all of us. So we have to be generous and not so possessive of our knowledge, because the world needs all of our knowledge to be spread in a big way, because if somebody's listening to your show, there's somebody who's listening because they want to be a contribution to the world, yeah. Right? So we say, just go for it. Share everything that you heard today. I don't own it. The universe owns it.
And I can't imagine you saying, okay, I'm going to take an 18-year break, and for 18 years, I don't want my work to help anybody. I want to deprive the world of any gift that I've put out there for 18 years. So take that, planet.
You're right. Take that. Well, could I tell you the end of that story about the Oprah story?
No.
Do we have enough time?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Go. Absolutely.
Okay. I have to tell you, because there's a little bit more to that story. So my kids are just whiny to the hilt that day. I put them on the couch. I'm looking for Bounty, and I see not only is this guy being interviewed by Oprah, but he has a best-selling book, and by the way, stood up at one of my seminars and committed to writing that book, because I always have people stand up and make a commitment, and everybody intention the success of that. Mm-hmm. And so he has Oprah in the best-selling book, and I have these 2 whiny kids on the couch. And at that moment, I thought, I have ruined my life. People say, did you ever doubt your decisions? I say, of course I doubted my decisions. We're humans, we doubt. That's what humans do. I'm not a robot. If we're a robot, maybe we don't doubt. But I'm like, I ruined my life. I burst into tears, and I'm like, and the only thing that pulled me out of my self-imposed pity party was my little daughter goes, Mommy. I go, yes, sweetheart. She goes, I think you forgot our popsicles. So I was
way to pull the perspective back to what's important.
And there's even more to the story. I go into the kitchen and I'm pouring the orange juice into those plastic molds. You make those orange popsicles, because I had forgotten. And I'm pouring the orange juice into the molds, and I am mad at the universe. Like, how could you do this to me? I'm knee deep in dirty diapers, and he's an Oprah. Like, this was not how it was supposed to work. And I get this little voice that says, remember the book. And I felt like it was the voice of God. And by the way, when you get the voice of God, it's not like Charlton Heston, like, Debra, remember the book. No, a little whisper. And I'm like, yes, I do remember the book. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, my book was in the hands of a New York publisher when I decided to be a mom at home too. There's a lot to the story. Anyway, so I'm like, I do remember the book. And then that little voice says, no, not that book. And I saw this image of a book that I had read many years before. And it was about a man who had actually died and went through that tunnel of darkness. And there was a being of light that greeted him. But he came back to life, and he wrote this book. He'd been dead for like a minute, and he wrote, but it seemed like he was dead for a lot longer from his story. But he said that he met this being of light, and the being of light said to him, would you like to see a highlight reel of like the major points of your life? And it was a very short highlight reel. It just showed him teaching his son how to swing a baseball bat, and it showed him dancing with his daughter at her wedding. And the man said, even in having these, like, but wait a second, what about the time I brought my company public? What about the time I made my first million? What about, and the being of light said, all of those moments glorified you. And then the being of light said, he tells about this in the book, the being of light said, would you like to see the life of another person who has just passed on at the same time you did? And the man said he did. And he tells in the book that this curtain of golden light parted, and there sitting on a throne surrounded by a host of angels was the woman who used to clean his house, who took 2 or 3 buses just to come and clean his toilets. And the being of light said, you used to think of her as such a pathetic creature, but she had a glorious life. And then the being of light showed the man the highlight reel of her life. And it showed her carrying a pot of soup to a sick friend. And it showed her comforting her child who had been bullied. And it was sad. And it showed her holding her mother's hand and stroking her mother's hair as her mother is making her transition. And it showed the woman like just cheering at the baseball games for the kids whose parents couldn't be there because they had to work 2 or 3 jobs just to put food on the table. And it showed her just going to church and hugging everybody up and saying, how you doing today? And the being of light said, when you get here, you find out that the only thing that matters while you're on earth is how much love you give. And so I just went back onto the couch and loved up my babies a little bit more and knew that my dharma, if it was to be a speaker, if it was to be on TV, it was just going to come, not in my timing, but in perfect timing. And it has.
Yeah. And while he was there talking to Oprah, you were talking to your kids, and your kids are certainly no less important than Oprah.
And my kids are also making an amazing contribution to the planet, like more than I could even imagine. I mean, just amazing. I think I've told you about them, but they're in 25 words or less. My daughter is a network chiropractor, changing lives. She's a brilliant chiropractor. And my son started a nonprofit when he was 16, where he puts on basketball showcases for kids in the inner city of Chicago to help them get college scholarships. And he has raised over $50 million in college scholarship money for the kids in Chicago. Wow. And he also made a documentary on basketball in Chicago and how, so that people could see what life is really like in the hood and how basketball is the only way out for a lot of these kids. And it was nominated for an Emmy.
Wow. Proud mama.
I am so proud, but I'm just proud that they're making a contribution again. And that's success. Get ready for success. Yeah. That's true success. And my son, when he was sleeping on our couch and he was working day and night to put on these showcases, he would also make highlight reels and send them out to college coaches. And he wasn't taking a penny for himself. And he taught me something. And this is a really profound principle for success. He said, I said, honey, you're getting millions of dollars in scholarship money for these kids. Maybe you might want to make a little money for yourself.
Just a thought.
And he said, Mom, just trust me. I'm building relationship capital. And what's so interesting, when he was ready to make his movie, one of the people he built relationship capital with gave him $400,000 to make a movie. And now these kids who he found in the inner city of Chicago are NBA players. One of them sponsors his showcase now, so he doesn't have to, raise his own money. And now he's also, he owns his own sports agency. He's 28 now. He owns his own sports agency. Wow. And he represents NFL and NBA players. And he's in partnership with one of the wealthiest families in America. And you could let your imagination run wild, but you would know the name if I said the name. Well, you could go on his website. It's beyond.am, athlete management. But somebody else who he had built relationship capital with. And I think it goes, and I once said to him, Daniel, that is the most brilliant concept, that it's not just money capital, relationship capital. I love that. He goes, Mom, I said, what? He goes, I learned it from you. He said, you always said, just treat whoever is in front of you as the most important person in the world. It doesn't matter who they are, the color of their skin, their religion, their socioeconomic status. They are the most important person in the world. So why are you saying you learned it from me?
Right. And it's one of the ways to look at it is that when you stepped away from the stage to teach, like, no, you just were giving a seminar to 2 students for a long time, and it has obviously paid off big time. So.
Yes, and another great principle of success, especially for people who have children, they're watching us, and one of the proudest moments of my entire life was, I teach my Yes to Success seminars, but I also have small groups, and I had a retreat with a small group, and it was in Chicago. So Daniel met us for lunch, and one of my students said to him, boy, Daniel, while you were growing up, you're so successful. Was your mother always quoting to you from Napoleon Hill and Wallace Wattles and Thornton? And Daniel stopped for a minute. He said, I don't think she ever quoted to us from any of those people. I didn't learn how to be successful from any of those people. I just watched my mom and dad. Yeah. And that's the thing. We have to be, we have to walk our talk, because our kids are watching. And if you say one thing and you do another, these kids are so sensitive right now.
Man, aren't they good at that? Yeah.
So good.
Don't pay attention to what I'm doing. Do what I say, not as I do.
Right. Yeah. And, it doesn't work because they are just too bright. They're just channels.
So I know you have turned the Yes to Success in seminar that you did into a program, and folks are going to be able to hear about that. But in terms of books, you were telling me earlier about a book, the 5, and now of course,
Secret.
The 5 Secrets. I thought that's what it was.
Yeah. Well, what I did was, I had this book in the hands of a New York publisher back in 1987, 88, before my daughter was born, and I never published it. But what I did is I took some of the most salient points, the real juicy ones, just 5 steps to creating a life of true success, and I put it into an ebook. So, and I'd love to share it with your listeners if they would like it.
Oh, absolutely. And so I'll have a link to that. Can you share, just as a teaser, share something that they can take action on or use, maybe even today?
Yeah, perfect. Okay. There's a lot of turmoil in the world, and what many people tend to do is become attractors for more turmoil, because the more we talk about it, the more we vibrate with it, the more we, it's not that you hide your head in the stand, and because there's also a chapter on sacred activism, which is on doing what you can do, but do it on a basis of spirituality, not on a basis of hate, right, not on a basis of pushing against. And I actually shared the story, actually a text that I got from my son, and there's a picture of the 2 of us there, where he turned my teaching around on me during a particularly a time where something was happening in the world that I was getting very negative about. And he reminded me of my own teaching. I won't give it away because it's a really cool thing. But what I'll say for now is that that there are plenty of opportunities to look for the good. I mean, during the pandemic, right? There are the people who their job is to tell us what could happen, worst case scenario, which makes us vibrate with fear. And then there are those doctors and those nurses and those people who are, delivering groceries to homeless people, and the kids playing their violin on the sidewalk to the neighbor, to the elderly neighbor, and the doctors and nurses who not only risk their lives, but they honor everybody who leaves the hospital with clapping and balloons and confetti, and so much good in the world.
Yeah.
And so many people, celebrities and people of wealth who are just giving money away to food banks. And it is, so there are two ways that we can look at anything that happens. We could look at the thorn, or we could enjoy the beautiful rose. And if you want more roses in your life, put your attention on the rose. And if you want more thorns in your life, then put your attention on the thorn. And even in the movie What the Bleep, they showed that what we put our attention on is what we draw into our life. So it's not just some woo-woo concept. It has been proven by science. So, but I go into that in my book in a kind of interesting way.
Yeah. It's, what we put our attention on is what we're saying yes to. So to bring it around, are you saying yes to turmoil? Are you saying yes to pain or suffering? Or are you saying yes to success and happiness and wealth?
And we like saying yes to success.
Yes, we do.
To success.
So please, everyone watching, please say yes to success, because your success benefits others.
Well, we could do a whole nother show on that.
Yeah.
But we know that, one person who's like down and out comes in the room could bring the whole energy down. And when we are feeling happy and we share goodness, that energy, if we think, oh, I'm just one person, you are one powerful person. That doesn't mean, you don't have to be Pollyanna, oh, everything's great. But you know what? You have a choice at every moment. You could look at the cloud, or you could look at the silver lining. You could talk about the cloud. You could talk about the silver lining. Your choice, what you want in your life, and your choice, what you want to bring into the world and radiate out.
Amen. Amen. Well, thank you so much for choosing to join me on this. Thank you to everyone watching for choosing to watch us. Please choose to check out Debra's free ebook. And yeah, well, we'll probably have to do a part 2 at least.
Oh, good.
Thank you so much, Debra.
Thank you so much.